Hey everybody, Rich Noto, Florida licensed realtor, Florida licensed home inspector in Notary Public. If you're new to the channel, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you can catch more videos like this as I release them. If you have any questions or comments, you could put them in the comment section below, or you could send me a text message or an email as well. There's many ways to get a hold of me. My view with life is to always try to learn from the mistakes that I've made, or to learn from the mistakes of others when I hear the story of, the things that may have gone on. So what I want to do right now is I want to tell you a couple of stories that I have experienced over the past few years of being a realtor. The stories that I'm about to tell are really common, and there might be little variations on each story, but it's something that I hear quite often. These stories are stories that you really want to learn from, and you want to avoid being that potential, should I say, potential home buyer or potential home looker or home shopper. You really want to try to maximize your time in the process and the time that you spent working with your real estate agent. So for the first story, guy calls me up. Guy says to me, I've seen your videos, I've been to your website, all that stuff. And I say, okay, yeah, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. It's nice to hear. Anyway, he says to me that, he plans on coming in to see homes in Florida. He has his trip all planned, and he's coming in about a week. So in that situation, I said, okay, how can I help you? So the guy says to me, well, what I want to do is I want to go see some homes with you. I'm interested in, and he named some towns. He named his price, which I believe, I'm trying to remember, I think it was about $350 or so. So I went and then asked the number one question. Have you been pre-approved for a mortgage, or are you paying cash? Okay. So he says, well, no, I have not been pre-approved yet. And he says, but I have been looking at homes online for about 2 years now. So I said, 2 years, wow. And 2 years might sound like a really long time, but you'd be surprised how many people contact me and they talk about a time frame like 2 years or so that they have been looking. Okay, so my response then is I say to the buyer, okay, well, it's really important to get that pre-approval because you want to know how much the bank is willing to lend, so as a buyer how much you could spend. And it almost rhymes. You want to know how much the bank will lend, so how much you could spend. Lend and spend, okay? Most buyers make the mistake of deciding how much they can spend for the bank. When we purchase things, we go into a store, whether it's a loaf of bread, a TV, or a couch, we know how much that credit card is willing to lend, how much the bank is willing to lend us, or we have the cash in the bank. Okay, so first mistake there is looking for 2 years. Looking for 2 years is just, in my opinion, such a waste of time. A few weeks beforehand, great. You want to have an understanding of the towns. You want to see some homes that are maybe priced more in line with what they might be when you show up in Florida. Okay, but 2 years, the prices from 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 8 years ago, totally different. Okay, so that's the first mistake here. So I said to the buyer, I said, sir, you should really get pre-approved before you come into Florida. He says, oh, well, I'm good. I know I'm good on this, and that. He's talking, he's good. I said, sir, I've heard it many times, when buyers say that they're good, some of them, of course, will get it and will be good. But, in my experience, majority of them either don't get the amount that they want or don't get anything at all. Okay? So, that is something to just, keep that in mind. That's important. Okay, so I'm talking with him for a little bit. I have an idea of the price. I have an idea of the homes he might want. In my head, I already know where I'm going to go with him overall. But I did take some notes, and I did, over the course of that week, kind of write things down a bit. So it ended up where he said, okay, I'll get the approval. And, of course he was already scheduled to come in. Now the guy lives out of state, okay? So the trip is planned, so he had to, pay for hotel, all that stuff. Guy tells me when he comes in, I believe it was Monday, he contacts me. He says, listen, I'm in. And he tells me that he started the approval process before he left. So I think he left on like a Friday and his drive was like a day or so. And, he got there on, a Monday or whatever, or he arrived Sunday night. Anyway, he told me that he started the approval process. Okay, so on Tuesday, we were supposed to go look at homes, but I said, I need to be able to target the price. As a realtor, I need to target the price that the bank is willing to lend. I cannot target a price that the buyer wishes, hopes for, has, big happy thoughts about that they're going to get. I need a real number. Okay, so anyway, it's like Tuesday. The buyer contacts me. The buyer says to me, well, I heard back from the mortgage and I could hear it in his voice. And, it's not good. Mortgage tells him he can't get a mortgage for another 2 years because he needed like 2 years of steady work time at the amount that he wants to make the purchase of, whatever was $350 or so. He now has 2 more years to fix things, to get everything as, perfect as possible so that he can buy. This is a total of 4 years time now wasted. 2 years have been wasted based on looking at homes online. Okay, that's 2 years of wasted time. Now there's another 2 years of, this just has to be, done right in order to get the mortgage, which in that case, it was 2 years of steady work. Because the buyer was already in Florida, it's kind of like it's too late to even get a second opinion because typically you're looking at 2 to 4 days. So, this buyer, I suggested getting a second opinion, but I could hear in his voice that he wasn't even listening anymore. He was just totally done. His dreams were crushed. 2 years of his life looking, and then another 2 years before buying the home. And now when you think about how much prices have gone up, that $350 in the areas that buyer wanted to make the purchase, it's probably not happening at this point unless the home is really, really run down and in really bad shape. 2 years ago or so, which I believe it was about 2 years ago now, $350 was possible. It would have been a smaller home, maybe a 3-bedroom, something like that. Still possible, not anymore. Okay, so the moral of the story is get that pre-approval first. Before looking, before, spending hours, weeks, days, months, and years of your life, get the mortgage pre-approval. You could contact me if you're confused. I know some lenders, I'm not affiliated with them, but I've seen how these lenders have helped other buyers, and I'm pretty critical about who helps my buyers, who works with my buyers, whether it's sales associates, mortgage lenders, home inspectors. So, I want to make sure that the experience is a good experience and everybody that's helping my buyers would be up to the standards of if I needed the help, if I wanted the help. So, just keep that one in mind. All right, next story. Buyer calls me up. Okay, so next story. Buyer calls me up. She told me again, I've been following you, I've been watching your videos, all that stuff. And I said, oh, thank you very much. I always appreciate that. So the buyer says to me that, she's looking at homes, and she's looking at homes that are typically $700,000 and up. And then she tells me the communities that she's been looking in, and especially one community where she really, really, really loved those homes. So, I'm listening, and I said, okay, yeah, those homes are beautiful homes, and I agree, those homes are fantastic, really nice stone on the outside, just beautiful, beautiful homes. And, that builder typically does make some nice homes as well. So she says to me, I'm going to be the easiest customer that you've ever had. I know exactly what I want. This is going to be just simple. all that stuff. She's very excited. And, I'm happy, of course, because this person is very excited. So, the next thing I ask, have you been approved for a mortgage or are you paying cash? So she says, no, I do have the money to put down on the home, but I have not gone through the approval process because I first wanted to pick out the home that I wanted. Okay. I'm going to stop right there for a second because that right there, that is such a huge mistake. Most buyers spend a lot of time and they waste it picking out the home that they want. Picking out a home before knowing how much the bank is willing to lend, that is just, it's a mistake, okay? Because again, most buyers in that situation aren't going to get what they want, okay? A small percentage do, but what I've seen over the years, I would say easily 50% don't get what they want, what they dreamed about, what they think the bank should lend them, whatever it is. At least minimum half, I would say. She says, well, yeah, I'll do it. I'll get approved. So, we go through the approval process and, the buyer gets approved. The approval didn't go as well as the buyer wanted because the buyer ended up being approved for about $325 or so. So that's a huge difference. So it's not like we're talking about buyer was looking at $700, $750 and got approved for, $625, $650. That might still be, workable. In this case, we're talking about totally different homes. That luxury section at the time, because this has been a while now. This has been, I think, at least 2 years now or so. Back then, a $700,000 home looked very different than a $700,000 home does today because prices have gone up, prices have changed. It's a whole different market. So anyway, I'm having some conversations with the buyer, some phone calls. The buyer goes through the process. Now the buyer is trying to look at homes in that $300,000 range. Anyway, to make a long story short, the buyer did not end up purchasing anything. The buyer apparently was going to try to save more money to come back to be able to purchase a home that was up in the 400s. That ended it. I never heard anything back. As far as I know, at least not with me, the buyer never purchased. I can't imagine being able to, save up like $100,000 in like a year or two. And now that the market has again, increased so much, that buyer is probably, not going to get anything that buyer was dreaming about. The point of that story, though, is, again, if the buyer would have just been approved, go get the approval from the start, and, they would have been able to focus on the home that was really in the price range.